live. This is Law Call.
Hi, thanks for tuning in tonight. This is Law Call, where we are taking your calls live. If you have a question about the topic we're talking about tonight, which is car and truck wrecks, please give us a call. The number is 850-392-1544. And tonight we have a special guest. He's been here before, so I guess he's not that special. But Brian, it's good to see you, buddy. How are you?
What makes me so special? I'm not just a regular guest?
You're here, first off.
Well, appreciate it.
So that's a good thing. So Brian, tonight we're talking about car and truck wrecks, which is, this is really what we do almost every single day, is deal with people that have been injured as a result of a car or truck wreck or some sort of an automobile accident. So there's a lot of legal issues that pop up when you have that sort of event happen, and so tonight we're answering those questions. Again, the number 850-392-1544, or you can send us an email if you're a little shy to talk on the phone. That email is lawcall@wmbb.com. And actually we have an email to start the show with. Let's go ahead and put that up. All right, the email says, I was rear-ended a few days ago. The other driver's insurance wants to settle my injury portion, quote, as soon as you're feeling better, end quote. I hit my head quite sharply and was dazed and in shock. The concussion has been uncomfortable and the whiplash is now becoming worse. Do I need legal counsel for this? And that is from Sandra. Brian, does Sandra need legal counsel?
I would say about 98 or 99% of the time, if you are injured in a car wreck, it's better to talk to a lawyer for a lot of reasons. Number one, if you're offered money from the at-fault party's insurance company, you might have additional funds on your policy and you could jeopardize that by not notifying them. But there is about 13 things that could potentially get you into trouble, whether it's paying back your health insurance, whether it's paying back Medicare, whether it's not being or settling with a party you don't realize has additional insurance. And most of the time, if you're injured, it's bad to settle right away anyways, because you don't know the extent of your injuries, you don't know your medical bills, you don't know if you're going to have any residual effects, you don't know if you're going to have ongoing medical treatment. So insurance companies often like to, make a quick settlement offer, and it's their obligation. They are supposed to try and resolve a case to protect the at-fault party, but there's just so many potential problems if you settle your case right away, especially without, talking with a lawyer who can tell you about all the potential issues you have. Right.
And one of the things, some people have health insurance, some people don't have health insurance. Some people are protected by Medicare, Medicaid, TRICARE if you're in the military, VA if you're retired, and some people don't have those benefits. And one of the biggest things that I've always seen, we talk about PIP insurance a lot, personal injury protection, which is a medical benefit that is attached to your auto policy. In the state of Florida, a lot of people might have heard us being referred to as a no-fault state. When they say no fault, what they're referring to is the PIP insurance. They call it no fault because it is available to you if you're involved in a wreck, whether the wreck was your fault, somebody else's fault, or nobody's fault. Think of a situation, maybe you hit a deer or something just freaky happened, you hydroplaned and ran off the road and you got hurt. You have that PIP benefit available to you, and it's a $10,000 medical benefit, but it only covers 80% of your medical expenses. And so, Brian, I think you were kind of alluding to this. Think of the situation where you had an event like that. You go to the hospital, you do not have health insurance, but you do have that PIP benefit. You go, you have several CT scans done. They say, you need to follow up with an orthopedic, surgeon. You've got something wrong with your spine. PIP will pay 80% of that bill, up to $10,000, but then the 20% that isn't covered comes out of your pocket, and it's in that window of time that insurance companies say, I'll give you $2,000. I'll give you $3,000. And then you find out 45, 60 days later that
your bills that are outstanding are 3, 4, 5 times whatever you settled for.
More than what you settled for. And so now you settled the case, you accepted the cash, but you have no recourse, and your bills are actually higher than what you thought they were. And it's kind of sneaky like that.
And again, it's a double-edged sword. The insurance company has a duty to protect their insured who causes the wreck. So they're not necessarily doing anything wrong on behalf of their insured, but if you're not fully knowledgeable about your out-of-pocket expenses, your injuries, your medical treatment, you're making a decision with really imperfect information at that point in time. Where the insurance company, they see these types of cases all the time. They know it can potentially get worse for you. It might get better, but it really just depends. But most of the time, if I have a client who is in a car, or if I meet with somebody who's in a car wreck, they go get to urgent care and they get checked out, but 2-3 days later, they're fine, they have no residual issues, I'll walk them through the process with health insurance, car insurance, and what they need to do. But there's not much a lawyer does. If you are in my opinion, if you see a doctor one time and you are fine, there's not much really we're going to add negotiating the claim.
Right.
But if you're having issues 3-4 days later, a week later, and you need additional medical treatment, it is most beneficial to have a lawyer in those situations.
Right, especially if you're one of those folks. And I mentioned earlier, talking about health insurance and TRICARE and VA and Medicare, there are actually state laws and federal laws that require you, if you accept a settlement or if you make a recovery against an at-fault party from a car wreck, if you make a recovery, there are actually statutes both at the federal and state level that say you are required to reimburse your health insurance provider at least a percentage of what they may have paid in benefits. And so the way it typically breaks down is, let's use Medicare as an example. Somebody's involved in a wreck, they get their $10,000 in PIP benefits, they go to the hospital, they're referred to physical therapy, that doesn't work, they end up at pain management, they've got a pretty hefty amount of bills. After their PIP runs out, they use Medicare to pay for their medical expenses. And then the insurance company comes along and says, hey, we'd like to settle the case. You settle the case. But that's not the end of it when it comes to Medicare, because at that point, what are you required to do?
Well, you have to notify Medicare that, hey, I received the settlement. Here's how much it was. If there was an attorney involved, you got to notify them of the attorney's fees and expenses. And then Medicare will send you a demand letter that says, hey, you have to pay this amount of money within 60 days for the medical treatment related to your car accident. And if you don't pay it, interest will start to accrue. And they can actually file a lawsuit against you and come and get that money. So that's just Medicare.
Right.
Like Medicaid is different, TRICARE is different, Florida Blue is different. We have ERISA plans, which we don't need to get into the weeds about, but ERISA plans are different. So there are a lot of different nuances when health insurance is involved and personal injury settlements.
Right, and I think going back to Sandra's original question about should I get a lawyer for this, these are the types of things that you actually run into that if you do not have a lawyer, you run the risk of violating a federal law or a state law or maybe even a provision in your health insurance contract that talks about reimbursement. Having an attorney helps you navigate those things so that when you do settle your case, if you do make a recovery, you can make sure that all of those liens and obligations are satisfied, because the lawyers, we're just as responsible to make sure those are taken care of if we're representing you, and we make sure you're protected in that regard. And usually, I mean, statistically, we're going to be able to get more of a recovery than somebody representing themselves would get. I think the statistic is 3 to 5 times more of a recovery having an attorney represent you on your claim than you would get if you were representing yourself.
And the other big thing is not only can we normally get more money in your pocket at the end of the day, but you understand what we're doing. We're explaining every step of the way. You understand the insurance limits or lack thereof. So it's basically making our clients knowledgeable, but also providing them a pretty good service.
Right, right. So there you go. That's auto insurance claims in a nutshell. And so if you have any other questions, or if we've said something that might have piqued your interest a little bit and you have a question you want to ask us, give us a call. Again, the number is 850-392-1544, or you can email us at lawcall@wmbb.com. Brian, you know, one of the first questions that we typically get, and I know you get it as well because we work in the same office, how long is my claim going to take? How long is it going to take me to get this done? I've had the wreck's happened, I've been to the doctor, I've got a lawyer, now what? How long is it going to take?
And we always give the terrible lawyer answer of it depends. So I would say, and I know one of our attorneys who's on here all the time, Ted and I, it really just depends on your injuries, insurance limits, and things like that. But I would say 90% of our cases, we really don't want to start negotiating until you're done with your medical treatment or you reach a point that we call MMI, or maximum medical improvement, where you might still get medical treatment, but you have kind of plateaued on your recovery. And so that's the new normal. The reason we want to wait until we get there is so the insurance company and us can evaluate the claim, all your medical bills, any future care that you need, any residual effects. But we also have a really accurate accounting of the bills. Now, there are exceptions, and I know you know this. If there is a significant injury, a death, we move those cases much quicker, and it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to settle quicker, but we're going to put pressure on the insurance companies a lot quicker because we don't know the insurance limits. We don't know if it's a big company. where there's
Right.
money beyond the insurance. We don't know if it's an individual. We don't know who the owners of the vehicle are. We don't know our client's insurance.
We don't know if that person was driving for an employer, and it may implicate an employer's liability policy.
And yeah, so I had a client who I still currently represent, but it was a very significant injury. The two insurances that we knew about offered the money, and it was only a penny of what her case was worth within about 7 days. But the case didn't settle at that point in time. They offered it, we didn't accept it because we were waiting on the insurance company to provide us an affidavit from the at-fault party. And they did that, and in the affidavit, the person admitted truthfully that, hey, I was on the job working for company XYZ, and they have $5 million in additional coverage. So it's one of the benefits of hiring an attorney is
Right.
sometimes if you get those checks and the insurance company say, hey, here's all the coverage we have, you're going to sign it and settle it, and then you have no idea there's an additional $5 million in coverage.
And you're
out
signing
there.
a release. I mean, they pay you the money. You sign a release, and that release says that I'm accepting X amount of money, and in exchange, I'm going to release all claims, all liability against the person that hit me. And people do that, and they don't even realize that this person was on a job and they're working for somebody, so they're in the course and scope of their employment. In Florida, that makes employers liable for the actions of their employees. The term is respondent superior, or vicarious liability.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, they settle the case, and here you go, there's $5 million in coverage, which some cases, Brian, you mentioned the person that goes to the hospital, they're checked out, they feel fine a couple of days later.
You don't need $5 million
Low
in
limits, you're not
coverage.
going to need $5 million, but let's say it's something a little bit more serious.
Where somebody's admitted to the hospital, has multiple surgeries, is still having problems walking,
Right.
and things like that. You need that additional
That
coverage.
additional coverage is very important, and you would never know about it if you didn't go through all the different steps that we go through when we're trying to vet a claim and determine coverage.
So the question was, how long does it take? It really depends.
It really does depend.
On insurance limits, your injuries, your medical bills, and things like that. But a majority of the cases, before we start negotiating, we want to wait until you're either discharged from medical treatment or hit that plateau
Right.
where we know the new normal.
So we know what it is that we're negotiating on.
But there are exceptions. Like
Right.
every lawyer in every legal situation will tell you, there's no black and white answer sometimes. There's a lot of gray.
There it is. There it is. All right. So again, we're talking car and truck wrecks. If you have a question, give us a call, 850-392-1544, or email us at lawcall@wmbb.com. We're going to take our first break of the night, and we'll be back in a couple minutes. Thanks for tuning in. Again, this is LawCall. We're taking your calls live. We're talking about car and truck wrecks. If you have a question about that, or really if you have any legal question at all, phone lines are open. The number is 850-392-1544. And during the break, we actually did get an email from Jason. Let's go ahead and put that email up. All right, Jason said, my parked car was hit and damaged. I didn't want to buy another car at this point in my life. Unfortunately, because of the age and miles, it's only worth about $3,500 according to the Blue Book. Insurance says it's $10K to fix. Do I have to accept their offer to total the car, or can I make them fix it? And that's from Jason. Jason, that's a good question. Actually, a lot of when people hire us to represent them for injury claims, there's always, almost all the time, an accompanying property damage claim that we typically don't get involved in. We will help escort people through the process, but usually it's a pretty straightforward process on how they do the evaluation. But in Jason's case, this is something we see quite a bit. Somebody has an older vehicle, and with the cost of body work these days, if you have an older vehicle that may be worth $3,000 to $5,000, even a minor fender bender or a dent in the door could end up totaling the vehicle because the amount to fix it ends up exceeding the value of the vehicle, or gets up to a certain percentage. Usually it's around 75%. If the cost to fix the car is more than 75% of the value, they're typically going to total it. But what do you do if you've got a vehicle that's perfectly drivable, it's just got a nasty dent in the door that costs a lot to fix?
That's a more complicated question. In Jason's situation, it really depends. If it's a vehicle that is not drivable, the insurance company only has to do what is obligated under the terms of the contract. And in your contract, which nobody ever reads, but lawyers do, it says they will pay the lesser of the cost to repair it or the total value of the vehicle, whichever one is lower. So the insurance company does not have to pay $10,000 to repair a vehicle that is worth $3,500. But there are some options. You can total it out, but then you have to get the title cleaned up because it's deemed a total loss.
Right.
And you have to.
And if you have a total loss or a salvage title, you can't insure it because a lot of insurance companies are not going to insure a vehicle that has been declared a total loss.
Correct, but there is a process, which I've only been a part of it about twice, where you get it taken from a salvage title and basically it's recertified, and now the vehicle is drivable. So you can basically total out the vehicle less what the salvage value is. So the insurance company will let you keep the vehicle minus the salvage value. You get a check, but then you have to go through the process of recertifying it.
Right.
So there are options. It's just a little bit more complicated. The other things we run into is somebody has a car payment, and they are mad about that. But again, the insurance company isn't under any obligation to reimburse you for a new car.
Right.
And in Florida, just because you now have a car payment and you didn't, you can't go after the at-fault party. That's probably the most common thing I get from clients is they had their car paid off, and now they have a car payment, and they're mad about it. But there is no really recourse beyond totaling out the vehicle. But we also run into situations where, somebody doesn't put a down payment, they buy a new car and it's totaled out, and they, finance it over 84 months, and it's totaled, and the car's worth $20,000, but they owe $25,000.
Right.
So what happens in those situations when the car isn't worth what the loan is?
Again, it's really it's an unfortunate situation for the person that owns that vehicle that is upside down in their payment, and we see that from time to time. Think about if you have a vehicle and you want to go trade it in, but you're upside down. A lot of people will roll the money that they owed on that other vehicle. If they go to buy a new vehicle, they will roll that debt onto the note of their new vehicle. And so they buy a new vehicle for $25,000, but they were $8,000 upside down on the vehicle they traded in. And so now they've got a note for $33,000 on a $25,000 vehicle. And then
Which is okay until...
It's okay until 3 months into that ownership, they get in a wreck, and now the vehicle's a total loss, and they say, well, it's worth 20 grand now, and you owe 32 on it, and you're $12,000 upside down. It's a very unfortunate situation, but the insurance companies are not responsible.
And the at-fault party is also
The at-fault party is not responsible for that. I mean, this is a very tough lesson. Some people are good at negotiating, at buying cars. Some people are not. Some people, my dad always told me, the worst thing you can do when buying a car is go into the car lot acting like you really, really, really want to buy that car. I remember.
They know.
I remember because they know. He said, if you act like you really want that car, they will absolutely sell it to you, and they can't wait to see you coming in. So first off, you gotta be a little bit more strategic in your negotiating.
Have a poker face.
Have a poker face. So you don't end up in these situations where you are driving a vehicle that you owe more on than it's worth, because if you do find yourself in that car wreck situation, you could really find yourself in a financial hole that the insurance company, the at-fault driver, is not responsible for you making a bad deal.
And
that's hard to tell people, but that's the reality of it.
And the only other thing is there is something called gap insurance that it kind of makes sense.
That's exactly what I was leading to.
Yeah, is you can get gap insurance, which does not cost that much, and sometimes your bank or whoever may require it if there's no money down, or if you roll over a prior note, where if your car is worth $20,000 but you owe $25,000, gap pays most of that difference. It won't pay 100% sometimes, but it pays 98 or 99% to where you're not stuck owing $5,000 without a car, and now you're just kind of left holding the bag. But that is one thing to consider. And the only other thing I'll add on, when you're buying a car, it's best not to finance like service options. So we are service
prepaid
packages
maintenance,
where you don't need to do that. There's very little upside, and it can really put you in a bind.
Right.
If you're in a car wreck, that first year out, and it's totaled, because then you got to pay for that service package, even though you didn't use it.
That's right. Yeah. So try to avoid financing the things that really financing anything that you don't need to finance, and that'll keep you out of trouble. All right. Again, thanks, Jason, for that email. That was a good question. It's a timely question. It's one we get almost every single day.
I would say
when
almost every day.
Almost every day come in, because property damage seems to be the first thing that's on everybody's mind, sometimes even before their injuries.
Because they need transportation.
That's right.
Whether it's to get to work, get to a doctor, take the kids to school, take them to daycare, run errands. I mean, in Florida, we don't live in New York City. You need a car to get around, or have a mode of transportation if you're not, near some sort of public transit.
That's right. Yeah, there are some basic things that an insurance company in a property damage setting that they do owe for. If the person damages your car, they owe to either replace or repair that car, or pay you the fair market value if they've totaled it out. If it's their person's fault, they owe you a rental car for the time period that they're making that determination of either paying to fix the car or paying you the fair market value. If your vehicle is damaged but repairable, they owe you for diminished value, which is the diminished value in your vehicle. When you go to trade it in, and now you've got a bad Carfax because it's been in a wreck, there's a value to that. It's called diminished value. And again, this all circles back to Sandra's original question. Why do you get a lawyer? Insurance companies are not going to tell you these things. They're not going to tell you that they have to put you in a rental car. They're not going to tell you that you're entitled to diminished value. But you are. And so hire an attorney, help you navigate through those pitfalls, take care of liens, make sure you're fully compensated, make sure you get everything you're entitled to get if you're unfortunate enough to be involved in one of these wrecks. It's not your fault. All right, good deal. We're going to take our last break. Again, phone lines are open. Give us a call, but we'll be back in a couple minutes. Thanks for staying with us. Again, LawCall, we're taking your calls live or your emails. If you have a question, give us a call, 850-392-1544. Or if you want to send us an email, the email address is lawcall@wmbb.com. And actually, we did get another email in from Claire. Everybody's wanting to email tonight. Nobody wants to call.
I guess they're shy.
Go ahead, put Claire's up there. All right. A neighbor who rides with me to work was injured when I got into a car accident. Am I legally obligated to pay her medical bills? Brian?
That's an easy question. If you are deemed at fault for the accident, you do have some obligation to pay medical bills. The only difference would be where paying medical bills would definitely come in is if you're giving a neighbor a ride and they don't have car insurance, then your PIP benefits would go to your neighbor who's a passenger or any occupants of the vehicle.
But if Claire's friend has her own vehicle and they're just riding to work together, Claire's friend would get PIP benefits under her own auto policy.
Even though her car is not involved in the wreck, and that's one of the most common things.
Why does my insurance have to pay for it? Because the legislature says so.
That is what the law is.
That's right. That's right.
But most people are always worried about a claim, making their premiums go up, and that's a whole nother topic. But if you're not more at risk, then your premiums don't go up.
That's right. All right. Thanks, Claire, for sending that in. All right, so Brian, we're getting to the end of the show. You got any shout-outs you want to?
Of course. G Money, I guess, is watching the show, so shout out to Gary. Bruce, who is one of my paralegal's husbands, he's our #1 fan, apparently. So shout out to Bruce and Donna. Hope you guys are doing well. Jimmy and Miss Pam, hope you guys are doing well. And normally Harriet and King are watching. Hi to you guys, and Nick and Laura. Hope you guys are doing well.
All right, I'm going to give my shout out as always to Miss Pam. My man Rick at the Marlin called and gave me a shout out. I appreciate that, Rick. My mom and dad are watching. My wife Jen, my daughter Rachel, and my son Eli is sitting right over there in the corner. But I want to give a shout out to my family. Sam Weller, Big Sam up at Deer Point, is watching us tonight. My neighbors Jamie and Ed, love y'all, praying for y'all every single day. And my buddies Nick and Lauren, thanks for tuning in every weekend. And finally, a big shout out to the Perry and Young staff, my paralegals, our reception group, our intake group. They are the absolute best in the business, and they help us do what we do every single day to take care of our clients. So thank y'all for everything you do. And thank y'all for tuning in tonight. It's going to be a busy week in the thick of summer, so be safe. And thank you.
See you next week.
See you next week. God bless.